He humiliated her in front of everyone, loud, cruel, unapologetic, unaware that her wedding ring wasn't fashion, it was protection. By the time he realized who she really belonged to, escape was no longer an option. The question was, would he survive the apology? The designer heel hit Becca across his ribs before her mind could register the movement. She flew backward, crashing into a towering Christmas display. Gold and crimson ornaments exploding like fireworks around her body as she slammed into the marble floor. The impact tore her sleeve, sent her shopping bag skidding across polished stone, and split her bottom lip against her teeth. For 3 heartbeats, the entire luxury mall fell silent. Becca lay there, tasting copper and pine cleaner, staring up through the forest of designer-clad legs at the crystal chandeliers hanging like frozen stars above. Then her vision focused on the Italian leather shoes standing inches from her face. The man wearing them. She didn't need to see his face to know. Still crawling on your belly where trash belongs, her ex spat, his voice dripping with the same venom he'd used 3 years ago when he drained her bank account and disappeared without looking back. Some things never change, Becca. You're still nothing. He had no idea who she was anymore. No idea that the broken 21-year-old he remembered, the one who'd begged him not to leave, who'd sobbed in an empty apartment with $17 and a disconnected phone, who'd eaten ramen once a day just to afford bus fare, was gone. No idea that she'd clawed her way out of that darkness. No idea about the platinum wedding band hidden beneath her black leather glove, or the penthouse she'd left that morning with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. No idea about the black card in her purse that had no spending limit, or the Mercedes waiting in the parking garage with diplomatic plates that made traffic cops look the other way. And he definitely had no idea about the man whose last name was now legally attached to hers. Stephen Tuttle. The Mafia boss. Her husband. The Russian underworld king whose name made corporate executives sweat and politicians check their bank accounts. The man whose security detail was currently pushing through the Christmas crowd. The man whose private number was vibrating in her purse right now, because the smartwatch on her wrist had detected the impact and sent an automatic alert. Becca's trembling fingers reached for her phone, blood from her lips smearing across the screen as she accepted the call. Are you hurt? The Mafia boss's voice came through, deadly calm, the kind of quiet that preceded hurricanes. Around them, shoppers had their phones raised, recording. Security guards stood frozen, uncertain whether to intervene. Her ex still stood over her, chest puffed with false victory, oblivious to the fact that his entire life had just been marked for demolition. Yes, Becca whispered into the phone. She heard it immediately, car doors slamming in the background, engines roaring to life, sharp commands being issued in Russian. The organized chaos of power mobilizing. 7 minutes, the Mafia boss said simply. I need you to stay exactly where you are. Don't move. Don't speak to him. Just breathe. Her ex was laughing now, turning to the crowd with his arms spread wide like a performer. You all see this? This is what happens when. He had just kicked the wrong woman. In approximately 7 minutes, when the Mafia boss's black convoy pulled into this mall with men in white suits and enough legal and illegal power to rewrite reality itself, this man was going to learn that some mistakes don't just cost you, they erase you. That there are consequences in this world that money can't fix and apologies can't undo. But he still didn't know it yet. Right now, in this moment, surrounded by Christmas lights and luxury brands and recording phones, he still thought she was nothing. That was his last mistake. And the Mafia boss was already 6 minutes away. Before we dive deeper into this story of survival, ruthless justice, and reclaiming power, I want to wish you a meaningful holiday season. May you find the strength to rise from whatever tried to break you, and may you surround yourself with people who see your true worth. Now, if this story resonates with you, if you believe in consequences for cruelty and second chances for survivors, do me a favor, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Your support means everything and helps stories like Becca's reach the people who need them most. Now, let's see how a woman went from broken and abandoned to untouchable. 6 hours earlier, Becca had stood in the walk-in closet of the penthouse she still couldn't quite believe was hers, running her fingers along designer labels she'd once only seen in magazine ads. Despite the luxury surrounding her, silk dresses, cashmere coats, shoes that cost more than her first car, she found herself reaching for a simple black dress. Classic. Understated. Invisible. You're doing it again. She turned to find the Mafia boss leaning against the doorframe, already dressed in a three-piece charcoal suit that probably cost 5 figures. He was devastating in the way dangerous things often are: sharp jaw, darker eyes that missed nothing, presence that commanded rooms without him saying a word. Even in their bedroom, even in this intimate moment, he carried authority like other men carried cologne. Doing what? Becca clipped on pearl earrings, the ones he'd given her on their 1-month anniversary. Choosing the simplest things in your closet. He crossed to her, his hands sliding around her waist with the casual possessiveness of a man who'd earned that right through devotion, not demand. You're married to me now, Becca. You don't have to make yourself small anymore. She leaned back against his chest, feeling safe in a way she'd never felt with anyone else. I like simple things. I like spoiling you. He kissed the side of her neck, and she felt him smile against her skin. Humor me. You humor me by loving me exactly as I am. His expression softened in that way it only did for her, the Mafia boss disappearing, just Steven remaining. Always. Then the businessman returned, checking the platinum watch on his wrist. You're going to the Heritage Luxury Mall today? Just some Christmas shopping. I won't be long. Something flickered in his eyes. The same protective instinct that had drawn her to him in the first place, though sometimes it bordered on suffocating. Take Victor and Dimitri with you. Steven, she turned in his arms. I don't need bodyguards to buy presents. His jaw tightened, and suddenly she wasn't looking at her husband anymore. She was looking at the Mafia boss. The man who'd built an empire through precision and ruthlessness, who'd survived assassination attempts and hostile takeovers, who knew exactly how cruel the world could be. Becca. You know what I am. You know what I do. You know the enemies that creates, the people who would love to use you to get to me. The steel in his voice was absolute. Non-negotiable. You don't leave this house without security. Ever. She cupped his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. She'd learned to pick her battles with the Mafia boss, and this wasn't one worth fighting. Okay. I'll take them. The relief was immediate. His shoulders relaxed, his hands gentling on her waist. Thank you. He checked his watch again. I have a meeting with the Kozlov brothers. Should be done by 7. We have reservations at 11 Madison Park at 8. Reservations? Steven, that place is booked months in advance. That dangerous smile. The one that reminded her exactly who she'd married. Not for me. Heat flooded her face even as she laughed. You're impossible. I'm resourceful. He pulled her closer, his voice dropping to that low register that still made her knees weak. Wear the red dress tonight. The one I can't stop thinking about taking off you. You're insatiable. Only for you. One more kiss, deep, thorough, promising, before he stepped back, the Mafia boss fully in place now, ready to face the world. Victor and Dimitri will meet you at the car in 20 minutes. Text me when you get there, when you're leaving, and if anything feels off. I will. I love you, Becca cross-tuttle. I love you too. She watched him leave, still marveling at the fact that this was her life now. That the man feared by criminals and respected by power players came home to her every night. That she was safe. Protected. Loved. 2 hours later, Becca walked through the Heritage Luxury Mall with Victor and Dimitri maintaining a discreet distance, close enough to respond, far enough to give her space. The mall was a cathedral of wealth, marble floors polished to mirrors, crystal chandeliers casting rainbow light, every storefront a monument to excess. Christmas decorations sparkled everywhere. Gold garland wrapped around marble columns, silver bells hanging from archways, a massive tree in the center court that had to be 30 feet tall. She'd just exited a boutique, bags full of gifts for Stephen's associates. The Mafia boss insisted on personal touches for holiday giving, when she saw him. Her ex. The man who'd left her homeless and heartbroken 3 years ago. The man who'd stolen her savings and sabotaged her job opportunities. The man who'd walked away without a backward glance while she'd begged him not to go. He was leaning against a Louis Vuitton display, laughing with a woman dripping in designer labels, probably his new victim. He looked exactly the same cocky smile, same expensive taste funded by other people's money, same entitled swagger that used to make her feel special and now made her feel sick. Becca's hands trembled. The shopping bags nearly slipped from her grip. 3 years. She'd thought she was over this. Thought she'd healed. But seeing him brought everything back, the pain, the betrayal, the nights crying in her car. The morning she'd woken up on her friend's couch realizing she had $17 and no plan. She should walk away. Turn around. Let Victor and Dimitri escort her out. Go home to the Mafia boss and forget she'd ever seen this ghost from her past. But her feet were rooted to the marble floor. And then he looked up. Their eyes met. For a moment. Nothing. Just two strangers in a crowded mall. Then recognition flashed across his face. Shock. Then something uglier twisted his features. Contempt. He whispered something to the woman beside him, his eyes never leaving Becca's face, and started walking toward her. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to get Victor and Dimitri, to call the Mafia boss. But she was frozen. Trapped by the past walking toward her with that same cruel smile. She had no idea that in less than 10 minutes, that smile would be gone forever. The memory came uninvited, sharp as broken glass. Becca had been 21 when she met him. Not the Mafia boss, someone else. Someone whose name she'd long since stopped saying aloud, as if silence could erase what he'd taken from her. He'd been charming at first. Attentive. The kind of man who remembered how she took her coffee and texted her good morning before she'd even opened her eyes. But charm, Becca learned, was just control wearing a better mask. It started small. A borrowed 20 here, a loan there. Her credit card for our dinner because his wallet was in his other jacket. Then came the bigger asks, rent money when his check was delayed, car repairs that somehow never got fixed, an investment opportunity that would change everything. By the time she noticed her savings account flatlined at zero, she was too embarrassed to tell anyone. Too ashamed to admit she'd been so stupid. He didn't just take her money. He took her friends too, poisoning every relationship with carefully planted doubts and manufactured drama until her phone stopped ringing. He took her confidence, convincing her she was lucky anyone tolerated her at all. And when there was nothing left to take, he simply left. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone. Becca spent the next 3 months couch surfing, rotating between acquaintances who pitied her enough to offer a sofa but not enough to let her stay. She learned to skip breakfast, to call lunch intermittent fasting, to laugh off dinner invitations she couldn't afford to reciprocate. She learned how many days you could wear the same interview outfit before someone noticed, how to charge your phone in coffee shop bathrooms, how to smile when everything inside you was screaming. She could have asked for help. Her parents would have wired money, no questions asked. But pride was all she had left, and she guarded it like a dragon hoards gold. Better to disappear than to beg. Better to rebuild in silence than explain how thoroughly she'd been dismantled. So she found the cheapest room in the worst neighborhood and took the first job that would have her, waiting tables at a diner where the cook was handsy and the tips were shit. She ate ramen and wore thrift store clothes and swore she'd never be that vulnerable again. No more trusting pretty words. No more believing in rescue. When the Mafia boss found her, she wasn't looking to be saved. She was looking to survive. And survival, she'd learned, didn't care about bitterness, only about making it through one more day. Becca learned to move through the world like smoke, present but unnoticed, there but not really there. The diner job lasted 8 months before she found something better. Receptionist at a boxing gym in a neighborhood that straddled the line between gentrifying and genuinely dangerous. The pay was still shit, but it was steady. And the gym owner, an ex-fighter named Sal, didn't ask questions about her past or her references. He just handed her a key and told her not to let anyone steal the equipment. She showed up early. Left late. Learned the names of every regular, memorized their schedules, kept the books cleaner than they'd ever been. Discipline became her religion. If she controlled nothing else, she could control her punctuality, her work ethic, her refusal to complain. Victimhood was a luxury she couldn't afford. The Mafia boss came in on a Tuesday. Becca noticed him immediately, not because he was handsome, though he was, in that severe, sharp-edged way that suggested violence lived just beneath his skin. She noticed him because everyone else did. The gym went quiet when he entered, conversations trailing off mid-sentence. Even Sal straightened up, suddenly formal. "Mr. Tuttle," Sal said, wiping his hands on a towel like he was meeting royalty. Stephen Tuttle. The name meant nothing to Becca, but the weight of it clearly meant everything to everyone else. The Mafia boss didn't acknowledge Sal immediately. His eyes swept the gym with surgical precision, cataloging exits and occupants and potential threats in the span of a breath. When his gaze landed on Becca, she didn't look away. Didn't smile. Just met his eyes with the kind of tired neutrality she perfected. He blinked first. "You're new," he said. Not a question. 3 months, Becca replied. "You like it here?" "It pays rent." Something flickered across his face, amusement, maybe, or recognition. Like he saw something in her answer that pleased him. He started coming in regularly after that. Always alone. Always controlled. He moved through the world with the certainty of a man who'd never been denied anything, but there was something else too, a watchfulness that reminded Becca of soldiers in old war films. Men who'd learned to sleep with one eye open. They didn't speak much at first. But the Mafia boss noticed things. When Becca skipped lunch 3 days running, a sandwich appeared on her desk with no note. When a drunk member got aggressive, Stephen materialized from nowhere, his presence alone enough to end the confrontation. He never touched her. Never flirted. Just watched. Protected from a distance. It was Sal who finally explained, "Stephen doesn't help people. But when he does, he doesn't do it halfway." Becca wasn't sure what she'd done to earn that kind of attention. She only knew she wasn't going to waste it. Stephen Tuttle didn't look like what people imagined when they heard the word Mafia. No gold chains, no theatrical displays of wealth, no entourage of muscle-bound idiots. He wore tailored suits in muted colors, drove an unremarkable sedan, and spoke in a voice that never needed to rise above conversation level. But everyone knew what he was. The Tuttle family had roots in the Russian bratva that stretched back 3 generations. Stephen's grandfather had built the foundation through extortion and brutality. His father had expanded it through strategic violence and fear. Stephen had refined it into something almost corporate, precise, methodical, and devastatingly efficient. He had rules. Simple ones. No unnecessary violence. Business was business, and bodies drew attention. No second chances for betrayal. Loyalty wasn't negotiable, and forgiveness was a weakness he couldn't afford. People respected the Mafia boss not because they feared his temper, he rarely lost it, but because they feared his certainty. When Stephen made a decision, it was final. When he gave his word, it was law. Becca learned this slowly, in fragments. A comment from Sal. A news article she stumbled across. The way people moved around Stephen like he was the sun and they were planets locked in orbit. She'd been working at the gym for 7 months when he asked her to dinner. Not as a date. Stephen was too direct for games, but as a proposition. "I want to marry you," he'd said over untouched plates of pasta. "Not because I'm in love with you. I respect you too much to lie. But because you're strong, and you don't bend, and I need someone like that." Becca had stared at him. "That's the worst proposal I've ever heard. It's the only honest one you'll ever get." They were married 3 weeks later. Courthouse. 2 witnesses. No flowers. The Mafia boss didn't cage her. He gave her access to accounts she'd never dreamed of but never questioned how she spent $1. He installed security at the apartment but didn't demand to know her schedule. He protected her from a distance, the way he always had, absolute but invisible. For the first time since she was 21, Becca slept through the night. Ate 3 meals a day. Stopped looking over her shoulder. Financial security was strange. So was emotional safety. She kept waiting for the catch, for the control to tighten. It never did. Until tonight. "I'm assigning you a driver," Stephen said over dinner, his tone brooking no argument. "And Marcus will accompany you to public events." Becca set down her fork. "No. It's not optional. I'm not a prisoner. You're my wife. That makes you a target." The Mafia boss's eyes were cold, certain. "I won't negotiate your safety." Becca felt the old familiar anger rise. The same instinct that had kept her alive when she had nothing. "Then we have a problem." The mall smelled like cinnamon pretzels and artificial vanilla. Becca had been reaching for a scarf, soft cashmere, the kind she could finally afford without checking her bank account, when she heard the voice. "Well, look who got herself a sugar daddy." She froze. Turned slowly. He looked older. Softer around the middle, harder around the eyes. But it was him. The man who'd taken everything and left her with nothing. Derek. His name tasted like ash. "That's all I get? After everything we meant to each other?" He stepped closer, performing for the small crowd that was already forming. People loved a spectacle. "Heard you married some Russian. Guess you finally figured out how to monetize that pussy." The words hit like fists. Becca's face went hot, but she kept her voice level. Walk away. Or what? You'll call your owner? Derek laughed, and several onlookers chuckled with him. You were always a whore, Becca. Just took you a while to make it official. She should have seen it coming. Should have remembered that men like Derek didn't just want to hurt you, they wanted an audience. His hand shot out, shoving her backward. She stumbled, catching herself against a display. The crowd gasped but didn't move. Phones appeared, a forest of glowing screens capturing everything. You think you're better than me now? Derek's voice rose. You think money makes you clean? The kick came fast, his boot connecting with her ribs, driving the air from her lungs. Becca went down hard, her shoulder cracking against the tile. Pain exploded through her side, white-hot and absolute. The crowd stepped back. No one moved to help. Security materialized at the edge of the scene, radios crackling, but they hesitated. This was a domestic situation. Complicated. Easier to wait for police. Derek stood over her, breathing hard, fists clenched like he was deciding whether to continue. Becca didn't cry. Didn't scream. She just lay there, staring up at the fluorescent lights, feeling the cold tile against her cheek. The pain was almost secondary to the familiar weight of humiliation, of being seen at her most powerless. But something was different this time. She wasn't alone anymore. The thought came calm and certain, even as Derek spat at her feet and walked away. Even as the phones kept recording. Even as security finally approached with their useless questions. Becca closed her eyes. 300 miles away, the Mafia boss's convoy entered the city limits. Steven sat in the back seat, reading a contract, unaware. His phone was on silent. It would be another 6 minutes before someone sent him the video. The mall went silent in waves. First the entrance. Then the corridor. Then the entire atrium where Becca still lay on the cold tile, paramedics kneeling beside her with questions she wasn't answering. People turned toward the disruption like flowers following the sun. The Mafia boss entered flanked by 4 men in white suits, crisp, identical, and utterly incongruous with the suburban shopping center. They moved with military precision, carving a path through the crowd that parted instinctively. Steven walked at the center, his face empty of expression, his eyes scanning the scene with that same surgical focus Becca remembered from the gym. Mall security saw him and immediately straightened, suddenly professional. The senior officer murmured something into his radio. Within seconds, the 2 police officers who'd been taking witness statements quietly relocated to the periphery, their body language shifting from authority to deference. No one questioned it. Power had entered the room, and power rewrote the rules. Steven reached Becca and dropped to one knee beside her, dismissing the paramedics with a single glance. His hand found her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with a gentleness that contradicted everything about him. Can you sit? Becca nodded. His arm went around her waist, supporting her weight as she rose. The pain in her ribs flared bright, but she didn't make a sound. Who was he? Steven's voice was conversational, almost soft. My ex. The words came easier than she expected. The one I told you about. The one who. I remember. His jaw tightened fractionally. His name. Derek Hoffman. Steven nodded once, committing it to memory. Then he looked at her, really looked at her, and Becca saw something she'd never seen before in the Mafia boss's eyes. Not rage. Rage was hot and temporary. This was colder. Permanent. I should have insisted on the security, he said quietly. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. Yes, Stephen said, helping her to her feet. It is. He steadied her, then turned. One of his men had already located Derek in the crowd, easy enough, given how everyone else had instinctively moved away from him. Derek stood near the foot locker, phone in hand, trying to look casual. Trying to disappear. The Mafia boss walked toward him with the inevitability of a closing door. The crowd melted away. Derek's face went from confusion to recognition to fear in the span of 3 seconds. Stephen stopped 2 feet away. Looked down at him. When he spoke, his voice carried across the silent atrium. You touched what belongs to me. Derek tried to laugh. It came out strangled. Look, man, I don't know who you think you are. Stephen Tuttle. The Mafia boss said his own name like he was reading from a phone book. Flat. Factual. You know the name, or you will in approximately 90 seconds when you search it on your phone. Derek's hand twitched toward his pocket. Stephen didn't move to stop him. Go ahead. The crowd watched as Derek pulled out his phone, fingers fumbling. His face went from pale to gray as he scrolled. Becca couldn't see the screen, but she knew what he was finding. Articles. Court records. The kind of search results that made smart people very, very quiet. I don't believe in unnecessary violence, Stephen continued, his tone unchanged. Messy. Inefficient. Bodies raise questions. He tilted his head slightly. But erasure? Erasure is clean. Derek's phone slipped in his grip. I didn't, I didn't know. By tomorrow morning, every bank account in your name will be frozen pending investigation for fraud. The IRS has been extraordinarily helpful. Stephen spoke like he was discussing the weather. Your employer will receive documentation of certain discrepancies in your expense reports. Fabricated, of course, but convincing. You can't. Your fiancée, Jennifer, isn't it, will receive an email from an encrypted account. Photos. Text messages. A quite thorough chronicle of your activities over the past 6 months. The Mafia boss paused. Some of the photos are real. Some aren't. She won't know which. Derek's breathing quickened. Please. Your landlord has been informed of a planned lease violation. Your car loan will be called in full by week's end due to a clause in the fine print you never read. Your phone service will be terminated for non-payment of a bill you never received. Stephen's eyes were empty, factual. In 6 months, Derek Hoffman will exist only on paper. No money. No job. No home. No reputation. The crowd had grown completely silent. Even the mall's piped music seemed to have stopped. Unless. Stephen glanced back at Becca, still standing where he'd left her, one arm wrapped around her ribs. My wife prefers mercy. Every eye turned to her. Becca looked at Derek, really looked at him. Saw the fear, the humiliation, the complete destruction of the power he'd wielded so carelessly just minutes ago. Saw him the way he'd seen her at 21, helpless, broken, begging without words. She could stop this. One word from her and Stephen would walk away. Derek's eyes found hers. Pleading. Becca said nothing. Stephen nodded once. That's what I thought. He turned back to Derek. You have 5 seconds to leave before I change my mind about the violence. Derek ran. The Mafia boss didn't watch him go. He simply returned to Becca, helped her to the car, and made a single phone call in Russian. 3 sentences. Then silence. Becca didn't ask what he'd said. She already knew. The first domino fell at 6:47 a.m. the next morning. Derek's bank accounts. Checking, savings, the credit union account he'd thought was private, all froze simultaneously. The notices cited suspicious activity, pending federal review. His ATM card was declined at a coffee shop. His Venmo stopped working. His credit cards returned insufficient funds. By noon, he'd been escorted from his office by security. The email his boss received detailed falsified expense reports totaling $47,000. Derek's protests, truthful, desperate, only made him look guiltier. HR offered him the choice to resign or be terminated. He resigned. Jennifer received her email at 2:18 p.m. The photos were damning. Some were real, screenshots of dating app conversations, receipts from hotels. Others were expertly fabricated, placing Derek in situations that never happened but looked entirely plausible. She didn't call. Didn't text. Just changed her relationship status to single and blocked his number. By evening, the screenshots had spread to his friends. Group chats went quiet. Invitations disappeared. The wedding venue sent a cancellation notice. Derek tried posting his side of the story on social media at 9:34 p.m., a rambling explanation about a crazy ex-girlfriend's husband, about being targeted, about the truth. The post was reported and removed within 6 minutes for violating community guidelines. His account was suspended pending review. The lease violation notice arrived by courier at 11 p.m. Immediate eviction for unauthorized subletting, something Derek had never done, but the fabricated evidence was airtight. On day 3, Derek sent Becca a message through a mutual acquaintance. A public apology. He'd post it anywhere she wanted. Say anything she demanded. Just make it stop. Becca deleted the message without responding. On day 7, Derek's car was repossessed from the Walmart parking lot where he'd been sleeping. The loan company cited Clause 14.7b. Immediate collection rights upon material change in creditworthiness. The Mafia boss showed Becca the reports dispassionately. Updates delivered over breakfast like weather forecasts. Bank account status. Employment verification failures. The restraining order Jennifer filed. Derek's mother's Facebook post asking if anyone had seen her son. Enough? Stephen asked on day 12. Becca looked at the file. Looked at the man who'd once made her feel worthless, now himself erased. She waited for satisfaction, for vindication, for the hot rush of revenge completed. Instead, she felt only the quiet closing of a door. Enough, she said. Stephen nodded and closed the file. Derek Hoffman effectively ceased to exist. 3 weeks after the mall, Becca's ribs still ached when she breathed too deeply. The bruises had faded from purple to yellow-green, then disappeared entirely. The physical damage healed quickly. Everything else took longer. She didn't return to the mall. Didn't need to. Stephen had the cashmere scarf delivered, along with every other item from that store in her size. She donated most of it. Kept the scarf. The money Stephen had recovered from Derek's frozen accounts, the remnants of what he'd stolen from her years ago, plus interest, plus penalties, sat untouched in a separate account for 2 weeks. Becca stared at the number. $43,000. More than Derek had taken, less than what it had actually cost her. She didn't want it. On day 15, she started making transfers. $5,000 to a women's shelter downtown. $10,000 to an organization that helped abuse survivors with job training. Another chunk to a legal aid fund. She spread it out carefully, deliberately, watching the balance decrease with something that felt like relief. The final portion, 12,000, she kept. Not for herself. Becca started showing up at the boxing gym again. Not to work, just to watch. She noticed the young woman at the front desk, new, nervous, wearing the same thrift store professionalism Becca remembered from her own desperate days. She noticed the way the girl skipped lunch, the way she counted change for the bus. The scholarship appeared in the girl's locker 3 days later. Anonymous. Full tuition for community college, plus a stipend for books and transportation. Becca watched from across the gym as the girl opened the envelope, watched her face cycle through confusion to disbelief to tears. Watched her call someone, voice breaking with joy. Stephen appeared beside her. "You're not subtle." "Wasn't trying to be." The Mafia boss said nothing for a moment. Then, "You're different." "Better or worse?" "Yourself." Becca considered that. Maybe he was right. The woman who'd married Stephen had been strong, disciplined, rebuilt through sheer force of will. But she'd still been performing, proving she wasn't a victim, wasn't weak, wasn't broken. Now she was just Becca. Scarred and whole. Angry and at peace. Powerful not because someone had given her power, but because she'd reclaimed what was always hers. She left the gym that evening with Stephen beside her, neither of them speaking. The city moved around them, traffic and strangers and the ordinary chaos of life. No one stared. No one whispered. Becca walked with her shoulders back, her stride even and unhurried. The past was still there, would always be there. But it wasn't driving anymore. The Mafia boss glanced at her, something almost like pride in his expression. She wasn't rescued. She rose, and married power without losing herself. If you want more secrets from the underworld, more fascinating stories, hit subscribe. The next chapter might be the last thing you ever forget.